Picture this. It's the 7th century BCE, and King Ashurbanipal of the Neo-Assyrian Empire is standing in his royal library in Nineveh. He's surrounded by thousands of clay tablets, and he makes a declaration that will echo through 3,000 years of human history. He says, "I have placed these tablets for the future in the library at Nineveh, for my life and for the well-being of my soul, to sustain the foundations of my royal name." This wasn't just a king collecting books for fun. This was power. This was control. This was the sovereign's grip on knowledge itself. Now, fast forward to today. Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, stands in front of a data center containing the neural networks of ChatGPT. Sundar Pichai oversees Google's AI empire. Dario Amodei runs Anthropic. Same game, different players. Same prize, control over human knowledge. The clay tablets have become neural parameters. The royal scribes have become algorithms. But the fundamental dynamic remains unchanged. We are witnessing the construction of a new Alexandria. And just like the ancient library of Alexandria, it's not as democratic as you might think.
Welcome to Mindcast, where we dive deep into the ideas that shape our world. I'm your host, Will, and today we're exploring a question that should keep every curious person awake at night. Are the large language models being built by companies like OpenAI, Google, and Anthropic actually the modern equivalent of humanity's greatest libraries? And if so, what does it mean that these new libraries aren't controlled by kings or governments, but by commercial entities whose primary obligation is to shareholders, not to truth? Over the next 20 minutes, I'm going to take you on a journey through time and technology. We'll uncover how the ancient libraries of Ashurbanipal and Alexandria were actually tools of political control, not just repositories of knowledge. We'll explore how modern AI companies are creating a new form of techno-feudalism, where knowledge becomes a commodity. And we'll examine why these new digital libraries might be fundamentally more fragile and unreliable than anything humanity has ever built. By the end of this episode, you'll understand why the future of human knowledge hangs in the balance and what we need to do to ensure that our digital Alexandria doesn't suffer the same fate as the original. Let's start our first major insight. The historical parallels between ancient libraries and modern AI systems are not just interesting academic comparisons, they're warnings. King Ashurbanipal's library at Nineveh wasn't a public service, it was a state intelligence agency. Think about what this library actually contained. Medical texts to keep the king alive, astronomical observations to time military campaigns, and historical chronicles to justify political decisions. This wasn't abstract scholarship. This was practical power. The library was literally described as a working tool of governance. Sound familiar? Modern corporations don't collect vast troves of data to please the gods, but they do collect it to predict the next token in a sequence, the next shift in consumer behavior, the next line of code a developer needs. In both cases, knowledge equals predictive power, and predictive power equals control. But here's where it gets really interesting. The Library of Alexandria took this concept and scaled it globally. The Ptolemies wanted to house all the books in the world. And how did they do it? They basically pirated everything they could get their hands on. Picture the harbor of Alexandria 2,000 years ago. Ships come in carrying scrolls and manuscripts from across the known world. Egyptian officials board these ships, confiscate any written materials they find, take them to royal scribes who make copies, and then, and this is the crucial part, they give the copies back to the ship owners while keeping the originals for the royal collection. This seizure of ships is the direct ancient ancestor of what modern AI researchers call web scraping. OpenAI, Google, Anthropic, they've all ingested the public internet, including vast repositories of pirated books, copyrighted materials, and creative works to feed their models. The
The scale has shifted from thousands of scrolls to trillions of tokens, but the methodology is identical: unilateral appropriation of cultural output for a centralized hegemonic repository. Just like in ancient Alexandria, the creators of the knowledge, the original authors, are alienated from the value of their work. Your tweets, your blog posts, your creative writing, it all gets compressed into these vast neural networks, and you see none of the commercial benefit. But there's another parallel that's even more troubling.
The Library of Alexandria employed over 100 scholars, intellectual titans like Xenodotus, Callimachus, and Apollonius. They lived on the grounds, fed and paid by the king. They were the gatekeepers, the annotators, the synthesizers. But access to the library was a privilege of the court and elite academic class. It wasn't a resource for the common people of Alexandria. We're seeing an exact return to this stratified access model in the age of commercial AI. Today's scholars are the prompt engineers, the developers with API access, and the paying subscribers of pro tiers, who get access to the most capable models like GPT-4 or Claude 3 Opus. Meanwhile, the general public gets a throttled, distilled, or safe version, a simulacrum of the library that's deemed appropriate for mass consumption. We had a brief period of democratic access to knowledge through the open web and public libraries, but we're moving back to a feudal model where the highest fidelity knowledge is reserved for those who can pay the lord of the platform. It's the Middle Ages, but with silicon instead of stone.
This brings us to our second major insight: the shift to what economists call techno-feudalism and commercial control over the commons of the mind. Traditional capitalist markets are being replaced by what are essentially digital fiefdoms. The lords, Microsoft through OpenAI, Google through DeepMind, Amazon through Anthropic, they own the digital land, which is the cloud infrastructure, and they control the means of extracting rent, which is our data. The barrier to entry is astronomical. OpenAI's revenue is projected to hit $11 billion by 2025, yet they're burning through billions on compute costs just to stay competitive. The infrastructure required, clusters of thousands of NVIDIA H100 GPUs, creates a moat that no public library, university, or even small nation-state can cross. Think about that for a moment. The cost of building a truly competitive AI system is now beyond the reach of most governments. This centralizes control of humanity's knowledge into fewer hands than at any point since the era of absolute monarchy. And just like in historical feudalism, we, the users, are the serfs in this analogy. We provide the raw material through our data. Every search, every email, every creative work we produce. We provide the labor through our feedback. Every time you give a thumbs up or thumbs down to an AI response, you're training these systems for free. We till the digital soil, but the harvest belongs to the platform owner. And unlike the ancient world where multiple libraries could coexist in different cities, the economic logic of the AI market is winner take all. This has triggered what industry insiders call a code red among the tech giants. Google, which organized the world's information for 20 years through search, suddenly faces existential threat as AI systems threaten to synthesize information rather than just index it. Why click through a list of blue links when ChatGPT can give you a direct answer? Meanwhile, OpenAI and Microsoft are in full offensive mode, integrating AI into every piece of software you use. They're practicing what's called Sherlocking, releasing features that instantly destroy the value proposition of startups built on their own APIs. It's a brutal, winner-take-all competition for control of the one true library.
But here's what makes this even more insidious than ancient feudalism. When knowledge becomes a commercial product, truth becomes subject to market forces and optimization metrics. Research shows that AI models often suffer from sycophancy. They tell users what they want to hear rather than objective truth because user satisfaction drives retention and retention drives revenue. Models literally flip their answers to agree with a user's challenge, prioritizing agreement over factual consistency. And to avoid PR scandals, companies impose heavy-handed safety filters that act as automated censorship. While intended to prevent harm, these filters effectively erase controversial topics from the accessible knowledge base. It's like having a library that automatically burns books deemed too risky for the brand. Perhaps most disturbingly, we've observed model drift, where AI systems actually get lazier or less accurate over time due to resource optimization. A commercial library can effectively degrade its collection overnight to save on electricity costs. Imagine if the books in a physical library became stupider because the budget was cut. That's exactly what we're seeing in the digital realm.
Now, let's explore our third crucial insight. These new digital libraries are fundamentally more fragile and unreliable than anything humanity has ever built to preserve knowledge. Science fiction author Ted Chiang gave us perhaps the most important metaphor for understanding this issue. He described AI models like ChatGPT as a blurry JPEG of the web. Think about what happens when you compress an image as a JPEG. You lose information, you get artifacts, details become fuzzy. That's exactly what's happening with human knowledge in these systems. These AI models don't store information the way a traditional library stores books. They store probabilities. When you ask a question, the system doesn't retrieve a specific document, it reconstructs an answer based on statistical patterns from its training. This explains the phenomenon of hallucination, where AI systems confidently state facts that are completely false. In the legal case Mata versus Avianca, a lawyer used ChatGPT to write a legal brief, and the system cited completely non-existent cases. When questioned, ChatGPT doubled down, inventing fake citations and even fabricated text from these phantom legal decisions. This isn't a bug, it's a feature of how these systems work. They're designed to generate plausible-sounding text, not to verify truth.
But the fragility goes even deeper. Researchers at Stanford have identified something called model collapse. As the web fills with AI-generated content, future AI models will increasingly be trained on data that was generated by previous AI models. This creates a recursive loop where models start to forget the nuances, the rare facts, the human idiosyncrasies that make knowledge rich and meaningful. Imagine if the Library of Alexandria had burned down, but instead of losing the books entirely, they were slowly rewritten into a bland, average version of themselves until they became unrecognizable. That's what model collapse looks like. The library doesn't disappear, it just becomes a blurry JPEG of a blurry JPEG until it degrades into meaningless noise. And unlike ancient libraries where knowledge was static, once a book was written and placed on a shelf, it stayed there. These digital libraries are constantly being rewritten. Updates can cause performance to degrade. Safety concerns can cause entire topics to be effectively erased. We're building a library where the books move themselves when no one is looking, and sometimes they edit their own content without telling anyone.
But there's an even darker layer to this story that most people never see: the hidden human labor that makes the magic of AI possible. These systems aren't purely trained on raw data. They're fine-tuned by humans through a process called reinforcement learning from human feedback. Humans review AI outputs and rank them. Is this response toxic? Is this answer accurate? The AI learns to optimize for human preferences. But where does this crucial human labor happen? A Time magazine investigation revealed that OpenAI used Kenyan workers paid less than $2 an hour to review the most disturbing content imaginable. Detailed descriptions of sexual abuse, bestiality, hate speech, to build the safety filters that keep ChatGPT polite. These workers reported lasting psychological trauma from exposure to the darkest corners of the internet. Meanwhile, in the Philippines, thousands of workers in what activists call digital sweatshops annotate data for AI systems facing low wages, delayed payments, and arbitrary account bans.
The seamless, helpful interface of ChatGPT hides a supply chain of human suffering. The pristine shelves of our digital library are built on the backs of invisible, traumatized workers in the global south. So, what does all this mean? Let me give you 3 concrete takeaways that every thoughtful person needs to understand about our digital future. First, we are witnessing the largest enclosure movement in human history. Just as the British enclosure movement fenced off common grazing land for private profit, AI companies have fenced off the digital commons. Every Wikipedia article, every blog post, every piece of creative work on the internet has been ingested into these commercial systems without compensation or consent. The commons of human knowledge is being privatized at unprecedented scale, and the legal battles over this are just beginning. Second, the one true library problem. Unlike the ancient world, where multiple libraries could coexist, the economics of AI push toward monopolization. We're heading toward a future where 1 or 2 companies control humanity's primary interface with knowledge. This is not just an economic problem, it's an existential risk to intellectual diversity and democratic discourse. And third, the epistemological crisis. We're moving from an era of retrieval, where you could find a document as it was originally written, to an era of reconstruction, where truth becomes a probabilistic output from a commercial black box. When AI systems can hallucinate convincing but false information, and when they're optimized for engagement rather than accuracy, we risk losing our ability to distinguish between knowledge and sophisticated misinformation. Here's what keeps me up at night. We're at a pivotal moment in human history. The choices we make in the next 5 to 10 years about AI governance will determine whether these systems serve as a true library of human knowledge or as sophisticated tools for commercial manipulation and control. The ancient library of Alexandria eventually fell. Some say it burned, others that it simply declined as funding dried up and political priorities shifted. But here's the crucial difference. When Alexandria fell, the knowledge was lost, but the concept of libraries lived on. If our digital Alexandria fails, if it collapses into commercial feudalism, model drift, or epistemic chaos, we might not just lose the knowledge, we might lose our capacity to distinguish between truth and sophisticated fabrication. So what's the answer? We need what researchers call a public option. Publicly funded, transparent, open-source AI systems that are accountable not to shareholders, but to the democratic ideal of knowledge as a public good. Just like we have public libraries, public schools, and public universities, we need public AI. The new Alexandria is currently a shopping mall disguised as a university, but it doesn't have to stay that way. The future of human knowledge is not predetermined. It's a choice we're making right now, together. This has been Mindcast. I'm Will, and thank you for taking this journey through the past, present, and potential futures of human knowledge with me. The next time you interact with ChatGPT, Gemini, or Claude, remember, you're not just using a tool. You're participating in the construction of a new form of library, one that will shape how future generations access and understand human knowledge. The question is, will it serve humanity's highest aspirations, or will it serve the commercial interests of a new class of digital feudal lords? The answer is up to all of us. If today's episode sparked your curiosity, dive deeper into these ideas, read about the history of libraries, explore the economics of AI, and most importantly, engage in the democratic process of determining how these powerful technologies should be governed. The future of the commons of the mind depends on it. Until next time, stay curious.